Alright, I thought I would start this clip with you watching me actually make an appearance, and I'll be watching a clip from a great channel, The Surfs, who's watching a clip from a not so great channel, The Jimmy Dore Show, who's watching a clip from another show, so let's go.
Bro, why are you not mentioning hero Julian Assange being extradited? What the fuck is wrong with you? Assange stands on the internet are some of the most psychotic weirdos that it's just like, just stop, okay?
Psychotic weirdos, he says as he flashes his black fingernail.
What is happening? What is like? Can 2021 get any stupider? What is happening right now?
Oh, no, but there's more, right? There's a whole lot more. This is how I ended up going down a particular rabbit hole, and that's why I felt the need to even make an appearance for this one, because it ends up getting pretty... Let's continue.
So here's all the people who are supporting Julian Assange. So press freedom. So there's all these civil liberty groups.
See, you're doing it right now. You're doing this as a litmus test. Like, here are the real leftists, the ones who had the courage to say, free Assange. Unlike Hassan, who's the fake leftist, because he's calling out people who turn it into their entire identity.
So Biden department to drop the Julian Assange case. Press freedom groups reacted. This is the Reporters Without Borders are supporting him. And here's Lula, who you spoke about.
You can see why I had to make this video. As a friend, always will be a friend of Michael Brooks, and I heard Lula's name came out of Jimmy Dore's mouth. That's why we're here. Alright, so if you found my channel What Do You Mean through TMBS, then you probably already know what clips are going to be in this. But there is an interview I would like to show you, and I'd just like to quickly say I'm setting out these videos the way I am so you can see the full title and the channel and the date.
And he has a new book out. Here it is. It's called Securing Democracy, which tells the explosive story of how he uncovered corruption at the top of Brazil's government and how his reporting led to the freeing of former President Lula. Please welcome Glenn Greenwald. Hi, Glenn.
Hello, James.
Now, before I show you more of that interview between Jimmy and Glenn, I thought we should go have a look at some of Jimmy Dore's past commentary on Brazil, which is also paired with some commentary from the late and great Michael Brooks.
If you notice something, this video starts in the middle of basically an infomercial for the lawyers who did the car wash investigation, which ended with Lula being put in prison. Let's play this.
Lava Jato, it's okay for no corruption.
Lava Jato has become a work of art itself, with broad support of the public. Lava Jato bumper stickers are everywhere. Judge Moro has become a folk hero, and Delton has a best-selling book on the operation.
I wrote this book to say that we are not heroes in this case, and car wash case is only the first step.
Lava Jato is an attitude in Brazil now. It's a ray of hope, and it's an example for young prosecutors, young judges, that they can make a difference. We hope that we have success in the legal procedures, but the success of changing the mindset is already happening.
We live in a window of opportunity for changes, and we are committed to use any chance, any possibility to make things better in Brazil. And doing so is a matter that is up to everybody.
Wow. That's kind of, I don't know, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I want to get a Lava Jato t-shirt.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I really want one.
So Lava Jato, that's car wash, I guess, in whatever. They speak Spanish, but I think they speak Portuguese, right? Portuguese.
All right. I don't want to be too much of an asshole about the last part and overlook the actual point here. Okay. And this is what we mean by aimless, vague, depoliticized, quote-unquote, populism. What did car wash actually reveal? Well, car wash undoubtedly revealed massive corruption across Brazilian politics, although it was weaponized to target one party. A party, the Workers' Party, which is simply not designed purely as a patronage system for corruption. A lot of the other parties involved in it literally were. But I'm going to quote now from Brian Mayer of Brazil Wire. It's no secret that American corporations have immensely benefited from Operation Car Wash, the international corruption investigation that was initiated in partnership between the U.S. Department of Justice, the SEC, the local public prosecutor's office in Curitiba, Parana, and the Brazilian External Police.
Here is a clip from that episode of the Jimmy Dore Show, because it's still up, and so you can actually see a part of what was in that video and the date and the title and everything.
One of Brazil's most beloved politicians. Ex-President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva was recently sentenced to 9.5 years in jail for taking bribes.
I'm going to read you this tweet from the Brazil Wire from February this year. The Jimmy Dore Show ran several segments on Lava Jato that crossed the line into outright propaganda. The operation was called a work of art, with the co-presenter even saying he wanted a Lava Jato t-shirt. Now let's hear some of that interview between Jimmy and Glenn.
Now, not enough of your American readership knows how you uncovered high-level corruption in Brazil's government. Now, I got the book. I read the preface. All right, I got it yesterday. I read the preface. I'm very proud of myself. So I know, because reading is hard. And can you tell us how your reporting had tremendous political consequences for Brazil, and what you revealed about Bolsonaro's government, and how your reporting literally helped free former President Lula da Silva of the Workers' Party? So tell us the story, Glenn.
Yeah, so in 2019 on Mother's Day, which was a Sunday, I got a call from a famous Brazilian politician named Manuela Dávila, who was a two-term member of Congress. And she was also the candidate who ran as vice president for the Workers' Party against the ticket that lost to Bolsonaro in 2018. So she made the runoff. She was the vice presidential candidate. She's a big deal in Brazil. She called me and she said, "Hey, I need to talk to you urgently. About an hour ago, my telephone was hacked, and the hacker insisted on speaking with me, and he showed me all of these private conversations I had with, close colleagues of mine in the Senate and my party and close friends of mine." And I thought, wow, what is this, like a blackmail scheme, or, what does he want? And she told me, he said, "No, actually, I only did that. I only hacked your phone to prove to you that I have the capability to hack the Telegram accounts of anyone in the world that I want. And I've spent the last several months hacking into the phones of some of the most powerful and influential political officials in Brazil, particularly Sergio Moro, who at the time was the Minister of Justice and Public Security for Jair Bolsonaro, the most popular political official in Brazil, because he was the judge who oversaw the anti-corruption probe that sent Lula to prison. And he said, "I have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of documents that prove grave corruption on the part of the most powerful people." And they talked about what they should do with this material. And she suggested, or he asked, to speak with me, knowing that I had worked on a similar archive in the Snowden case, doing the NSA reporting. So within about 20 minutes, I was speaking to him by computer, and he told me that he had an enormous archive, that he had hacked into these officials' telephones, and that it would change Brazil forever. It would destabilize the government. It would send people to prison. It would prove that the people who were viewed by the Brazilian media and by the Brazilian government as being the most kind of upstanding and ethical were in fact the most corrupt. So I, kind of kicked the tires as hard as I could to make sure he seemed like a real source. And when I had confidence that he was, I told him to start uploading the documents to my phone, and he said okay, and he began uploading the documents to my phone. And 12 hours later, I went to bed. I woke up the next morning. They were still uploading one after the next. And then the same thing the next day, the same thing the next day. And after 8 days, there was no end in sight. And I realized this archive is going to be bigger than even the Snowden archive, which at that point was the biggest leak in modern journalistic history. And so we created a kind of Dropbox. I was very eager to make sure the documents could be stored safely outside of Brazil so that it was out of the reach of the Bolsonaro government. So even if they got a court order or found out what we were doing, remember the guy that these documents were about primarily was like the attorney general. So he's in charge of the equivalent of the FBI, the NSA, all surveillance, all monitoring, all law enforcement, the federal police, like probably the single most powerful official in Brazil. And he used to be the most important judge. So I thought he could get a judicial order at any moment ordering us to not publish these materials, return them back. So I wanted them saved outside of Brazil. And we proceeded to go through the archive. And within like the first 24 to 48 hours, we found evidence of immense corruption on the part of that judge and the part of his team of prosecutors, not just in general, but specifically with regard to how they prosecuted Lula. And just a word about that, because this is the most important part of the story, which is that Lula da Silva was the former president of Brazil. He founded the Workers' Party. He was probably the most important center-left or left-wing political leader of the last half of the 20th century or first half of the 21st century, along with like Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro in terms of consequence and impact. But in terms of political success, probably the most important. He was, a labor leader. He grew up in extreme poverty, was illiterate until he was 10, lost a finger in a factory. And he became president and presided over extreme economic growth, took millions of people out of poverty. And by the end of his 2 terms, when he was term limited out of office in 2010, he left office with an 87% approval rating. And then his handpicked successor, Dilma Rousseff, who was a former Marxist guerrilla, she was imprisoned during the military dictatorship, was elected and then reelected, but then impeached in 2016. So in 2017, everybody knew Lula was going to run for president again. And all polls showed that he had a 15, 20-point lead over every other candidate, including Bolsonaro. He would have been elected easily, these polls showed. And right at that moment, when he was gearing up to run, they brought very dubious corruption charges against him. They cheated to make sure that it stayed in Sergio Moro's court, even though it wasn't supposed to be there. Sergio Moro quickly found him guilty and sentenced him to a decade in prison. And then a appellate court, which was notoriously subservient to Moro, affirmed the conviction. And when they did that, it rendered Lula ineligible to run. He went to prison. So they took Bolsonaro's primary obstacle to the presidency, Lula, out of the running by declaring him guilty, and then Bolsonaro cruised to victory. And the minute Bolsonaro won, the first thing he did is he turned around and rewarded that judge who found Lula guilty by giving him the most powerful ministry in the country, which was the Ministry of Justice and Public Security. And these documents that our source provided us revealed that the entire thing was a fraud and a scam from the start, that they cheated along the way in every step of the way, that it was politically motivated. And just 2 weeks ago, like 3 months after we began our reporting, Lula was freed from prison by the Supreme Court. And then 2 weeks ago, the Supreme Court invalidated the criminal convictions of Lula, restored his full political rights on the grounds that Judge Moro had acted corruptly. And that means that Lula is now free to run again in 2022 against Bolsonaro, which everyone expects him to do.
I mean, Glenn, you cannot overstate the impact that your reporting had on the culture of Brazil. You cannot overstate. Reading your book was mind-blowing about how you changed the culture and how people. So this Moro guy, which here's a picture of him, Mike, show everybody. So this here he is, Sergio Moro, and so go back to Glenn. So what this guy, he was like the J. Edgar Hoover but even more powerful than J. Edgar Hoover was in the United States, if people know about his power. So this guy had all this crazy power, and the courts would rule with him, and he was a cultural hero. People thought he was fighting for it. And then your reporting revealed the opposite about that guy, that guy was actually corrupt, and he was working in cahoots with this guy. This guy was the lead prosecutor for Lava Jato, and which stands for car wash, but that's where the investigation started. And then it turned out it was a completely corrupt partisan investigation that was going after Lula, who's the left winger. and they were in cahoots. The judge was in cahoots with the prosecutor, and he was showing him how to bring the case so it couldn't be appealed. And they were doing all this, and he was actually doing public crucifixions of the people he was going after, that Moro guy. So you exposed all this, completely changes not only the sentiment of the public, but also the sentiment of the Supreme Court inside Brazil, then started ruling against him. And to the point where now Lula's conviction has been overturned. I mean, the turnaround that has happened while Bolsonaro is still there, you can't overstate it. Now, what was more dangerous, going against Judge Sergio Moro or exposing Bolsonaro?
Well, it's interesting because, I remember I told the story in the book, when Manuela Davila called me that day about the source, I said, listen, do you mind if David, my husband, participates in the call? And she knows David very well. He's a member of Congress with the Socialist Party. And she said yes, and he participated. And David was very involved in the Snowden reporting, too. He was infamously detained at Heathrow Airport under a terrorism law by the British authorities and threatened with prosecution. And so after we got off the call, David sort of jokingly said to me, like, God, is there anyone else they can give these fucking archives to besides you? Like, why does it always have to be you that does them? Because he kind of knew that this is going to be, bring extreme turmoil to our life. And I had said, look, we already went through the Snowden story, so I feel like we're going to have a big leg up. We already know how to do this. And he said, I think you're being very fucking naive. Remember, this was in May of 2019.
All right, there is a lot to unpack here, so let's go through it with a quick little timeline of what I've presented so far. Back in 2017, you have Jimmy Dore getting it horribly wrong and just going along with rank propaganda. And then a year after, about shortly after the Michael Brooks show is created, you have him calling out Jimmy Dore's incredibly bad take. And then Glenn explains that in 2019, he was approached with information about how Lula was set up and shouldn't be in prison. Alright, so yeah, talk about litmus test. It's quite interesting to look back and see at what point people were on the free Lula side, especially people with such large platforms, at people with power to actually make a difference in the situation, like Glenn said he did. And with that said, it kind of sounded like Glenn Greenwald had a bit of pushback from his husband when they were approached with this information. And it's just like, how can you be in the business of exposing government secrets, or like at least married to a guy who's in the business of exposing government secrets, and then seem to have an issue when people approach you with important information? It seems very strange to me. While we're on the topic of their partners, let's hear from Assange's fiancée.
The conclusions of the magistrate that if Julian is extradited and placed under extreme conditions of isolation, it will drive him to take his own life. That extradition is oppressive. Yet the High Court decided against Julian on this occasion on the basis of political assurances, non-assurances that the US has given to the UK government. I say non-assurances. Amnesty International says non-assurances. Amnesty International has analyzed these assurances and have said that they are inherently unreliable. They incorporate the possibility of breaking those assurances in their very wording. Today, it's been almost a year since I stood outside court with our victory of the blocking of the extradition. For the past year, and the past year, 2 years and a half, Julian has remained in Belmarsh prison, and in fact, he has been detained since the 7th of December 2010 in one form or another, 11 years. For how long can this go on? Today is International Human Rights Day. What a shame, how cynical. To have this decision on this day, to have one of the foremost publisher, journalist of the past 50 years in a UK prison, accused of publishing the truth about war crimes, about CIA kill teams. And in fact, every time we have a hearing, we know more about the abusive nature, the criminal nature of this case.
Okay, so this is very important, as you can tell, the situation with Assange. So I fail to see how commenting on someone's nail polish is going to help at all. Someone's nail polish who also wants Assange freed. Like, how are you being any sort of productive? And just to further comment on that first clip at the start of this video, I've also received a comment on this channel of like, why aren't you talking about Assange? And I'm okay, so I made another video about it. So if you search on the channel, you'll find multiple videos I've made about Julian Assange, ones where I talk about like his whole history from what he's done for the greater good of journalism and all the way back to when he was living at home in Queensland. Because I don't know if Jimmy Dore knows this, but you can search videos that have already been uploaded by a channel and see what someone has previously said. I think Glenn Greenwald also needs to be told that you can search someone's previous position. And with that said, let's go back to that interview because it's got some incredible stuff in it.
Silver lining for me is that I get to have a show that's popular and successful, and I get to sell out theaters now because people at the New York Times, Washington Post, now The Intercept, they all suck so horribly that I can do a better job than them. Hi. And I do. It doesn't take much.
Well, and let me just say, because I see your show a lot. I'm not trying to like return compliments. I just want to make this point, like with your show. I watch your show. I don't watch it all the time. I watch it a lot. And, I think that, I used to get this all the time, ironically, like people, like these journalists who like call up the CIA and then publish what they're told to say by saying a CIA, operative told me anonymously, and they think that's real reporting. And they would say, I don't do real reporting. I do media criticism.
Yeah.
As though that's something different. To me, if you dissect what media propaganda is, and you show why it's propagandistic and deceitful and baseless and manipulative and wrong, that is reporting. That's real reporting. You're showing the public why and how the dominant messaging that they're receiving that's being transmitted to them by the most powerful institutions is misleading them because you're showing them what the actual truth is, or at least what there's no evidence to believe. And that's what you do. I watch your segments. There's a lot of preparation that goes into them. You kind of, you dissect individual paragraphs. You show where the propaganda is. And for me, your show really does do more journalism than 90% of the people who work in these digital media outlets who call themselves journalists. I learn more watching a segment of your show about some news item than I do reading the bullshit that they spew out. Half the time they're not even talking about news anyway, but even when they are, it's just regurgitation of what all their friends in media are saying without a molecule of critical thought being devoted to it.
Oh, I appreciate the compliment, but
incredible. It's hilarious. And it's amazing that these two videos about the same person on the same channel, they're both still there. Now look, I'm not out to do the next Sean and get Jimmy Dore to admit he was wrong, because Michael Brooks already called him out for this, already said he was wrong back in 2018 when Michael Brooks was still alive.